This is the new DJI Air 3S, and this is the Lake District. My favourite model drone for hiking just got that little bit better with the new Air 3S from DJI. Fantastic new primary camera with a 1-inch 50 megapixel sensor sitting on top of that secondary camera with a 70mm medium telephoto lens. Both with large apertures to really capture the very best of this landscape even in low light. Full HDR video up to 4K 60 frames per second, and now with LiDAR enabled obstacle avoidance to keep you safe even when flying in low light. New automatic active track giving you really dynamic results without you even having to hold the remote control. New return to home without needing GPS satellite lock. New free Panorama still mode as well, enabling you to draw the exact area that you want the panorama to contain, and even more internal memory to capture it all. I've been lucky enough to have this for a week up here in the Lake District, and I've been putting it through its paces, and this is how I've got on. Realise I look like a fucking elf. Pointy hat, but never mind. So after an incredible week away up in the mountains, I'm back home going through all the pictures and video footage I got from this long-awaited new model from DJI. I need to recap those features. I think it really was one of the longer lists I've seen of new features on any new release, certainly for some time. Let's go through them now quickly. The new primary camera, a 1-inch 50 megapixel sensor, large aperture, large individual little pixels, coupled with a secondary camera, telephoto, medium telephoto lens for zoomed shot. Both cameras specifically designed for low light and night settings. Improved HDR video for those high contrast, low light situations. New free panorama mode for even larger panoramic stills, defined exactly where you want them. An overhauled return to home system that doesn't even need GPS in order to function. New unthrottled top speeds when flying with strong tailwinds behind you. Of course, the updated Active Track 360 with an improved vehicle recognition, smaller object recognition, and a brilliant new auto dynamic 360 mode to film you from constantly changing positions when you're moving, giving really, really good dynamic results. A new low-light obstacle avoidance system with additional LiDAR and infrared sensors, which gives you even more protection even when flying in near darkness. What else, lordy? Right, OcuSync 4 video transmission up to 20 kilometers or 14 miles. 6 antennae, meaning the bottom line is the signal is going to be way, way more robust, especially when you are surrounded by trees, especially wet trees. 42 gigs of internal storage and the usual micro SD card slot, allowing up to ½ terabyte of video storage. And one of my favourite simple but useful additions, low energy sleep mode for quick transfer and USB-C cable transfer without having to power the drone on. So that really is literally a truckload of new stuff sitting on top of what I think were some pretty impressive existing functions and specs that came with the original Air 3. Now, I'll be honest, just because I got hold of this early from DJI to take up into the mountains does not mean that I can't complain or even criticising, although in truth, I really did not find much to complain about. I think my biggest disappointment was the lack of a variable aperture as you find on the Mavic 3 series. I guess Thinking about it, there needs to be a differentiation between the various models, and in many respects the new Air 3S actually surpasses a lot of the Mavic 3 series functionality. So having a variable aperture and even bigger sensor, I don't know, 4/3 sensor would have been absolutely tremendous, but it would have also pretty much wiped out the Mavic 3s at the top of the hat. So I kind of guess I can see why we didn't get this. That said, I found the Air 3S's cameras delivered some pretty astounding shots, and I will go into them now, but before I do, reminder, just give me a little thumbs up if you find this video useful. It really does help the video along. And needless to say, if you're not already on board, then obviously hit the sub button as well to get notified when I put more of this sort of stuff out. So thumb me up for now. Let's carry on with the camera. As I said, the new primary camera is a 1-inch 50 megapixel sensor sitting behind a 24mm lens, giving nice wide 84-degree field of view. This is perfect for most landscape photography and videos. Now, both the primary and the secondary cameras feed into new image processing hardware, again specifically designed for handling low light and high dynamic range situations where you can have a mix of very bright and very dark in the same frame. The HDR video manages a full 14 stops of dynamic range, and I did find this particularly useful up in the lakes where you often had very, very bright strip of sky dominating a much darker landscape overshadowed by mountains and hills and the like. Sunsets and sunrises also handled amazingly well too, with clean, crisp picture detail, even when the light is low on the ground below. You can see here in this beautiful cloud inversion clip early one morning over Ullswater, where the bright skies are not allowed to overpower the picture. The low-level fog on the lake, it's all captured at the right level of brightness, and all the details of the trees and the ground perfectly captured with the right light and crisp details. You know, you have to be at the right place at the right time to capture scenes like this, and it is crucial to have a camera that can handle the low light and high dynamic range that comes with this sort of situation. And even nighttime shots are massively improved with the camera's parameters allowing a much higher ISO, whilst the image processing makes sure you do not get that noisy, grainy result that would otherwise ruin nighttime pictures. You can see how I made full use of the free Panorama function to capture these stunning shots of the Aurora Borealis down on the south coast last week. These shots were taken after midnight in near total darkness, but you can see the colours streaming up into the skies clearly. Absolutely brilliant stuff. The new image processing platform is serving both cameras. You are still getting blistering results from the secondary camera, despite it having a slightly smaller 1/1.3 inch 48 megapixel sensor. It's also got a slightly smaller aperture at 2.8, but it sits behind a really brilliant 70mm medium telephoto lens, giving you around 3 times the zoom factor of the primary camera. Now, this lens gives you the full gauntlet of zoom compression, a photographic technique placing the camera slightly further away from the main subject, but then utilising the zoom lens to not only bring the main subject up close, but also bringing the background right in as well, making it just as much a part of the composition as the subject in the centre. This is precisely how I captured these sweeping vistas of the mountains behind and brought them right into the heart of the picture. And even in overcast and gloomy conditions, the camera still performs. Here at the summit of Helvellyn, 950 metres high, England's third highest peak, we were almost at cloud level. Using the 70mm medium zoom lens, again, you see how the huge and imposing striding edge looms up and becomes the very focus of the picture with its huge, jagged ridgeway. This is where a zoom lens comes into its own, not only to capture such striking images, but more fundamentally, also being able to capture things without having to fly too close. Striding edge is no walk in the park, so it was absolutely brilliant to be able to capture these images without flying anywhere near the people clambering along the ridgeway path, making their way to the summit. Now, I have to admit, another slight disappointment is the drop in video bitrate down to 130 megabits per second from the previous Airs. The Air 3, the original Air 3 had 150 megabits per second. Again, I'm unsure why, unless it's to maintain some disparity from the Mavic 3 series. Slightly annoying, but for the video I filmed, absolutely not noticeable. Both cameras can shoot in the same colour mode too, including 10-bit D-Log, and both of course produce JPEGs as well as RAW files when shooting stills as well, of course. And another nice feature is the ability to make use of QuickShots and MasterShots in both the main and telephoto camera as well. You get the full standard list of QuickShots including rocket, droney, circle, helix and boomerang, all of which can be shot via the main camera or with the medium telephoto zoom lens as well. Asteroid is the only quick shot that is not available on the telephoto lens, but it is there on the main camera. So you can still produce your cheeky little asteroid, because who doesn't like an asteroid? But what I really found far more impressive and useful is the new user-defined free panorama mode. This really was an impressive upgrade. It allows you to set define the upper left and the lower right corners of the picture you want to capture in panorama mode. You can make it as wide or as high as you want, and the fly app will work out just how many pictures it needs to take. You then just click go, let it do its thing, and it pitches up and down and pans left to right, capturing the precise scene you have set. And once it's completed, you've got to wait around 10 to 20 seconds for it to piece them together and give you the finished panorama, with all the lighting merged to give you a truly seamless, brilliant end photo. This is a super high resolution picture, and if you did want to play around with the individual pictures, they're all saved in a separate folder on the SD card as well. What else? Lordy, just too much to talk about. Of course, Active Track 360 full auto mode. Now this new feature, you'll see a little button on the top left of the 360 Active Track tile, and it will let you put the remote away and leave the drone to fly around you, basing its flight on where you are, where you're going, and crucially what your surroundings are as well. So if you're coming up towards a wall or a tree, the Air 3S will simply fly around or over it and move to a position to give you a true all-round result from any number of different angles. I have to say, being able to have full faith in the obstacle avoidance system really does help you get better videos and fly in more locations and situations. When I was using the Active Track, there wasn't even a single close call. Every time I ended up near an obstacle, the Air 3S handled it absolutely fine. Even when moving its position to try and re-establish the subject when it was lost. Here you can see me hiding behind the rhododendron bush, and the Air 3S moves right down below the main bush to try and find me again, avoiding the raised garden behind. So again, absolutely brilliant, impressive stuff. Now, of course, I've been primarily focusing on the camera here, but I did list a fair few other improvements too, not least of which is the new low light and nighttime obstacle avoidance system with all-round vision sensors, supplemented now by forward-facing LiDAR and downward-facing infrared sensors. Yes, LiDAR really is a major upgrade for offering low light obstacle avoidance. And I suppose when you think about it, on a new model that is so heavily focused on low light and nighttime performance, it made sense to upgrade the OA system to stay on and effective even at very, very low light. And I know all too well the issue of late afternoon low light and how it can switch off the OA system even though you think there's still plenty of light to be flying in. This is exactly how I crashed my Mavic 3 the other year, as I missed the warning that the ambient light had got too low and that the OA system had switched off. Not so now. Even in late afternoon light, the OA system performed perfectly, and you only get the low light warnings when you really are venturing out in near darkness. Now the specs state it will work right down to just 1 lux, which is literally a single candle's worth of light. And in my testing, the screen clearly shows the surround OA is not available, but the forward-facing obstacle avoidance works perfectly. So this really is a huge upgrade for evening and nighttime flying. You can see here, every time I try to fly towards myself, bang, stops. So again, absolutely brilliant stuff. And of course, another new and quite surprising feature is the overhauled return to home system. Now, it now captures the surroundings as it takes off and flies, meaning that certainly in daylight, good GPS satellite lock is not required for a successful return to home in case of signal loss. Now, for me, there's still no way I want to take off before I've heard that home point updated message. But of course, there are times when the GPS lock is so poor that you can be waiting minutes, especially if you're surrounded by mountains and trees. Now, in truth, I have not tested this function because, frankly, I did not want to do anything to risk losing the drone before I'd even finished reviewing it. But if you go into the safety section of the general settings, you can set the parameters and see how it won't now waste all that time and battery energy trying to get up to a high return to home altitude, but instead will just work out the best way back and start its return sooner. So again, like the new obstacle avoidance, LiDAR and infrared, this is another great little improvement to what was already, I think, a fairly impressive system in the first place. And before I forget, I have to mention one of the simplest yet most useful new features of this new model. Low power level shutdown, meaning you can now plug it into your laptop or computer with a USB-C cable and not have to remove the gimbal guard to power up the drone. Now when you stop flying and shut down, it'll stay in a low power mode for around 12 hours. Now specs state it'll only use about 2 to 4% of your battery, but crucially, it will magically appear as an external drive the moment you plug it in. Even better, if it's been more than 12 hours since you flew it and it's shut down completely, just a quick single press on the power button reactivates the low power mode again for another 12 hours. And of course, USB-C means super fast data transfer. So for now, finally, this is the drone that I can stop using tweezers to remove the tiny micro SD card each time I want to download all of my pictures. So again, absolutely brilliant. Look, it is all too easy to go all dewy-eyed and gaga at a new model drone, and I was determined not to let myself do that with this new release, but to stay objective and base my thoughts on actual deliverables rather than just the glossy specs. That said, you all know my two favourite models. It's the Mini 4 Pro for flying in built-up areas, and until now it was the Air 3 for use in the open countryside. Well, I can easily say this new version has not only brought me the better camera that I was after, but it's also brought a host of new features that I genuinely wasn't even expecting or even thought of. So I really am so impressed with this new iteration of the Air series. I mean, I really have had great fun putting it through its paces in a whole host of different situations. So look, I will be doing a fair few other videos on expanding some of the functions, how to get the most out of this new drone, and I will of course link to them up there somewhere when this video is edited and published. But look, I hope you found this helpful. Either way, until next time, I'm going to leave you with some of the highlights of this, what I think is an amazing new drone. Until next time, have fun, happy flying.